Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 634, You'll Know Her by Her Foot. Now, we're back to another one of these nature riddle poems. In this one, the her of this poem will be the robin. It'll be much like the clover, the nature riddle poem, the clover of 380. Do you guys remember when we did 285? Where she says, the robin's my criterion for tune, because I grow where robins do. But were I cuckoo born, I'd swear by him the ode familiar rules the nude. The buttercup's my whim for bloom, because we're orchard sprung. But were I Britain born, I'd daisies spurn, none but the nut, October fit, because through dropping it, the seasons flit, I'm taught, without the snow's tableau. Winter were lie to me, because I see New Englandly. The queen discerns like me provincially. This seeing New Englandly stands behind a poem like this. Anybody can look at a robin, but only Emily can bring it to the kind of life that she will in a poem like this. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, I playlist. Hopefully you worked through our set of introductory comments, as well as the preceding 633 poems. We just finished with 633 when bell stopped ringing. And if you have been doing that study with us, you'll be able to place a poem like this. Those other nature riddle poems, we'll list them in a little bit. Now, I want to point out Emily's eye here. Notice, she'll look at the robin, and she goes from the bottom, the foot of the robin, the feet of the robin, to the cap or the head of the bird. That is to say, she'll move from the feet to the leg, to the chest or the breast, and then finally to the head. Notice that we go as well in this poem from sight to sound. It's quite remarkable. She says it this way: You'll know her by her foot, the smallest gamboge hand with fingers where the toes should be, would more affront the sand than this quaint creature's boot, adjusted by a stem without a button. I could vouch unto a velvet limb. You'll know her by her vest, tight-fitting orange-brown, inside a jacket duller she wore when she was born. Her cap is small and snug, constructed for the winds. She pass for barehead short way off, but as she closer stands, so finer 'tis than wool. You cannot feel the seam, nor is it clasped unto of brand, nor held upon a brim. You'll know her by her voice. At first, a doubtful tone, a sweet endeavor, but as March to April hurries on, she squanders on your eye such arguments of pearl, you beg the robin in your brain to keep the other still. Now, of course, brain takes us back to 632, with the brain is wider than the sky. Notice she begins by talking to you. Again, one more reason for us to call our series Chats with Emily. You'll know her, notice the robin, by what? Well, first we start with her foot. The smallest gamboge of hand, gamboge of course yellow, right, hand. In other words, she's looked so closely at a robin. Emily has spent so much time looking at this robin that she points out the color of her feet. It would be fingers, but she says there's toes, fingers where toes should be. It's a wonderful inversion. Would more affront the sand than this, notice, quaint creature's boot. Joe used quaint in 16 of her poems, and I think this may be the key word of the poem. Adjusted by a stem without a button, I could vouch unto a velvet limb. How is it that birds can sit on a small, small branch or twig, and they don't fall to the other side? It's quite remarkable. You'll know her, notice secondly, by the chest, by her vest. Tight-fitting, orange, brown, inside a jacket duller she wore when she was born. In other words, newborns, robins are even more majestic in their coloring. And then her cap, right, is small and snug, constructed for the winds. In other words, the head of the bird. She'd pass for barehead short way off. But as she closer stands, so finer 'tis than wool, if you've ever been able to touch the head of a bird. You cannot feel the seam, nor is it clasped unto a band, nor held upon a brim. In other words, it's like her little, the robin's little hat, when the wind blows, keeps her little hat stays on, if you will. And then finally, from sight to sound, you'll know her by her voice. At first, a doubtful tone, a sweet endeavor. Sweet, again, used in 133 of her poems. But as March to April hurries on, she squanders on your ear the majesty of the bird. Of course, we're reading this, and we have to think about Shelley's, to a skylark, no doubt, right? She squanders on your ears such arguments of pearl. You beg the robin in your brain to keep the others still. Again, her use of the word still. And it's brilliant the way her use of the word still. In 95 of her poems, she uses the word. I think T.S. Eliot, I've said this many times, I think T.S. Eliot learned to use the word still from his study of Emily. What does he say? We must be still and still moving into another intensity. I think birds are a perfect metaphor for stillness. What is our message here? I think our argument is that nature is always wonderful and it's always challenging us. It's so majestic. To be, of course, it's a riddle poem, right? You get to the end of the poem for you, oh, she's talking about a bird. I got it. And of course, that will take us to 3a and the other riddle poems, poem 60, 72, 173, 297, 311, 507, 557, 558, and 602. All of those we are already classified as classic riddle poems. You can go back and nature riddle poems. You can go back and study them. If I need to own a poem like this at 3b, what is your favorite bird and how would you describe it from foot to head? Thank you.